Yes and yes. All right, great. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you today during this wonderful conference. My name is Ryan Splenda. I am one of several liaison librarians at Carnegie Mellon University Libraries, and I am here today with my colleagues Melanie Gainey and Sarah Young, and we are excited to talk to you about how we developed an evidence synthesis service at CMU Libraries. It transitioned into a program, and where we're going beyond that as well. Okay, so today's presentation, we're going to give you a little bit of context about Carnegie Mellon University, the libraries as well, and then sort of a quick timeline of how we evolved from establishing a service, it transitioning into a program, and where it currently stands at this point in time. We're then going to talk about more specifics related to the program as it stands and what we call our four pillars that we've built the program around. And then last but not least, we'll do a little bit more deeper dive of a framework of how we went from the service to the program. So you'll be hearing from all of us. Okay, to start out with and contextualize our situation a bit more, we operate out of Carnegie Mellon University, which is an R1 institution in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We have about 16.5 thousand students at our university, and it's at about a 50-50 undergraduate to graduate population split. Historically, we have been more in a graduate population institution, but over the last 5 to 10 years, the undergraduate students have caught up, so we're now more at that 50-50 range. And undergraduates will be important as we talk about how we're able to develop the service and specifically reach out to that population as well. We are a very heavy STEM and technical focused institution. We have a world-renowned School of Computer Science that has very heavy AI research focus on campus. We also have a very world-renowned College of Engineering, but we do also have expertise in a lot of the creative and artistic disciplines. We have a world-renowned drama school as well. So we sort of span the gamut a little bit around disciplinary areas of expertise. What's unique to our institution is we do not have a medical school, we do not have a school of education, and we do not have a law school. So some of the more traditional evidence synthesis types of projects that are pretty heavily represented in some of those areas aren't necessarily the case happening at CMU for us. To transition to the library's perspective and sort of our organizational structure, we do not have an evidence synthesis librarian whose primary responsibilities are totally devoted to that particular area of expertise. Rather, we have a liaison librarian system where several of us liaise to different colleges and departments on campus. And this allows us to sort of cover a variety of different disciplinary breadths from the library's perspective, as you'll see here in a second. We also operate, are able to operate while having postdocs serve in the libraries as well. That's been an ever-increasing opportunity over the last few years, and that will play an important role as we talk about our evidence synthesis program as well. We operate within this sort of entrepreneurial and innovative spirit that exists both on campus and within the libraries. There's a lack of bureaucracy from the library's perspective. So this allows us the creativity to explore and experiment with different types of services or programs. Our dean is often fondly says, go do good things, to which this allowed us the opportunity to sort of grow an evidence synthesis service into a program as well. Last but not least, we are faculty librarians, so scholarship and creative activity is actual requirement of us. And again, this provides us an avenue to connect with and collaborate our different departmental faculty, PhDs, and even research staff to do publication opportunities. Evidence synthesis allowed us the opportunity to do that as well. So just giving you a brief overview there. Okay. Time to introduce our team as it currently stands now. And of course, the goal in this is to show you some of that disciplinary and departmental liaison breadth that we have as a part of our team. We are led by Sarah Young, who is one of our social sciences liaison librarians, and she is the director of our evidence synthesis program. We also have Melanie Gainey, who is one of our STEM librarians that specifically focuses in the biology and neuroscience areas, and she's also the director of our open science program. And there's a lot of overlap between our evidence synthesis and open science programs, as will be discussed further by both Melanie and Sarah. I specialize in sort of business and economics from a disciplinary area. Then we have two more STEM librarians, Hao Yong and Kristen, who Hao Yong caters to various engineering departments, as well as our CMU Africa branch campus. And Kristen started out as a postdoc within the libraries, but eventually became a STEM faculty librarian who focuses with the stats, math, and physics department. And then fairly new to our program as it stands now is our first ever evidence synthesis postdoctoral associate, Erin Higgins, who works with us as well and sort of gives us a little bit more research oomph as a part of our program stance. So that's our team. Briefly, the evolution of how we came to this program. This all started back in 2018 and 2019, where a select few liaisons were fielding consultations around evidence synthesis related topics. A couple of those turned into in-depth evidence synthesis projects, one in the area of business and management and another one in the area of biology. Melanie will talk a little bit more about that as it comes up. So in the process of this discussing and these projects bubbling up, we started to have formal conversations with liaison librarians that had expertise or interest in evidence synthesis, as well as our administrative unit in the libraries about formulating a full-blown service around this. And we were able to get enough buy-in and support where that service actually went live in 2021, and then it was marketed to the CMU community as well. During this time, we also developed an initial evidence synthesis workshop that was part of our larger library workshop series that helped us brand and market sort of the service to the campus community as well. By 2022, the workshop series expanded into a three-part series that focused on a workshop related to tools, strategies, and techniques for developing effective literature reviews, a specific workshop on scoping reviews specifically, and then another one on bibliometrics and how that ties into evidence synthesis projects as well. Also during this time period, some of those initial ES projects that we worked on with the business and management faculty and the biology faculty members were published. So we decided to take the opportunity to create some video vignettes with those faculty on why our expertise was important to the process and how the evidence synthesis service was helpful in their research agendas as well. And then by 2023, more projects and consultation work came about. We were adding additional team members. This is around the time Hao Young joined our team, so we sort of got up to the fourth member of our team. But we were also noticing that as our service was developing, there was more so support around long-term evidence synthesis projects that didn't necessarily have a scholarly output related to them, but there were offshoots of these larger projects. So some classes were developed that were taught on campus, both librarian-led and faculty-led, that emphasized evidence synthesis principles as a major component of those classes, in addition to some other projects that we'll talk about, that Sarah will talk a little bit more about as we went from service to program. But this started getting us thinking, maybe we need to think about this from a more programmatic perspective instead of just a traditional evidence synthesis service. So we were happy to say that we got buy-in again and support to officially launch our program from service to an official program in 2024, and Sarah Young was named our initial program director. By 2025, this opened the door for us to add a postdoctoral associate to our team, and that is Erin Higgins, who I talked about before. And during this time, we also led to some more traditional evidence synthesis projects, but also methods-related research that we were able to publish on as well, and the team was as well. 2026, we are a fully formed 6-member team at this point in time, and we are now at the point where we are producing annual reports from the program perspective for the very first time that we are delivering to the libraries, but also it's a chance for the larger community to understand what we bring to the table as well in the hopes to get more buy-in for project-based work. Okay. So in a nutshell, the ES environment we support, there's a variety of different disciplinary areas and types of work that we support. We are still doing traditional evidence service projects like systematic reviews and scoping reviews. There are not as many of those as probably other institutions, but again, we were developing out other meta research types of projects and other related efforts outside of specific projects that were being published. For example, I mentioned the classes that were both librarian-led and faculty-led. So that's kind of where we are in a nutshell right now. And now I'm going to turn it over to Melanie, who's going to talk more about the pillars of our evidence synthesis program.
Thanks, Ryan. The activities of the evidence synthesis program fall into four main pillars, which I'll briefly describe and provide some examples of next. So as you can imagine, service is a big part of our evidence synthesis program. And similar to many academic libraries, we have a two-tier model where we can serve as either consultants or collaborators on projects with our student and faculty researchers on campus. And we have these roles outlined on our service page so that researchers can understand what exactly we will do in each of these capacities as they reach out to us. Next. As Ryan mentioned, we support a diverse array of departments on campus, many of which don't typically do evidence synthesis. Also, a wide variety of outputs, including projects that end up being a bit adjacent to evidence synthesis. So, to give you a sense of this, here are some of our recent collaborations. We've done a couple of systematic reviews with researchers in business and management. We have an ongoing scoping review on an education topic. We had a long-standing collaboration with researchers in biomedical engineering that started off as a scoping review and then evolved into an ES adjacent project where we ran the searches and they did screening and data extraction, and then they ended up applying topic modeling to the extracted data, and that is what they describe in the final publication. And then similarly, we have a project right now with linguistics professors that will also use a scoping review methodology combined with topic modeling. And at any given time, we don't have that many of these types of collaborations in progress, but the ones that we do have are very time intensive. So in addition to the traditional services and a collaborative role that we supply, such as running the searches, providing the screening software, and writing the methods section of the paper, it's also common for us to advise closely on each of the phases of the evidence synthesis project, since many of our researchers have no experience with it. And in addition to that, if our disciplinary expertise aligns with the topic, then we will also be involved with screening, data extraction, et cetera. And so, for example, in the case of this education scoping review, I'm actively participating in the screening and data extraction, as well as all of those other um, activities I described in the collaborator role. But the benefit of this is that we have these very deep collaborations. We spend a lot of time with these researchers, and that opens up a lot of opportunities for us. So, for example, with the biomedical engineering researchers, as that project was winding up, we were invited to co-teach a course on evidence synthesis with them. Next. We've spent a lot of time since we became a service developing our relationships and partnerships with folks within the library, the university, as well as beyond Carnegie Mellon. As for within the library, as the director of the Open Science program, I've worked really closely with Sarah so that we can make sure that we are following best practices for transparency and reproducibility in evidence synthesis workflows and providing that guidance to our researchers. And that work is described in the ACRL Open Science Cookbook that was published last year, if you're interested in that topic. And then more recently, members of the evidence synthesis team have also been part of the AI and research program from CMU libraries. And this will help inform how we talk about and integrate AI into ES workflows, as well as making sure we're aligned with our colleagues and how we're supporting it, as well as the strategic mission of the library. We have a long-standing partnership with CMU's Office of Undergraduate Research and Scholar Development, and that came about when the director of that unit attended one of our workshops in 2022. She learned about the methodology, and then she approached us with an idea, and that was the education scoping review I mentioned in the last slide. And that turned into a lot of different offshoot projects and opportunities for collaboration with her office. We ended up training undergraduate students in her programs on the methodology. In the course of that, in Train the Trainer style, we also trained her and her colleagues. And that allowed them to develop a 4-credit course where undergraduates participate in an evidence synthesis project with our guidance and guest instruction supporting it. And recently, we co-authored a book chapter with our colleagues in that unit, and it's really about all of the mutual benefits that come about from this partnership and cross-pollination of ideas. And from our perspective, the benefits of partnering with a non-disciplinary unit on campus. And then finally, beyond CMU, over the last couple of years, we've been in a vendor partnership with SysRev. Matt mentioned SysRev in the keynote address, and it's a platform that can be used for document review and data extraction. We were their first academic site license, and so we have been testing new features and providing feedback on them, as well as providing feedback on the terms of the contract. And so that's really important for helping to ensure that the product and the contract work well in an academic context. And there's a lot we like about SysRev, but just to be brief about it, it's very flexible, so it can handle all these different types of projects, both ES and adjacent to ES that we support. It works well with it supports fair workflows, which is really important because of our open science emphasis in our library. And it also has a Gen AI integration. Next. We engage in a lot of different types of capacity building on campus. We have a dedicated workshop series that we offer each semester. We do guest lecturing in courses and for academic programs, and we do consultation work. And that consultation work can be time intensive as well. Also feel invisible sometimes because we may or may not end up in the acknowledgments of papers. Sometimes the projects never actually end up to the paper stage. But that work is really important for us because we really want to ensure that the ES projects on our campus are meeting a certain standard of quality and rigor. And again, many of our researchers have never actually done evidence synthesis before. And then finally, we also offer two credit-bearing courses. One is a foundational research methods course for undergraduates, and it's not evidence synthesis per se, but we've taken a lot of the skills from evidence synthesis that we know and applied them to certain topics like how to form a research question and how to do advanced screening and different information sources, et cetera. And so it's very heavily informed by our evidence synthesis work. And the other course is really about developing AI literacy in the context of an evidence synthesis project. Next. And then finally, as Ryan mentioned, we have to engage in research in our roles as faculty librarians. And so the work we do in this program in that capacity fulfills those requirements for us. And so we publish both evidence syntheses as well as methods research. And we are also currently planning our first meta research hackathon for spring 2027. So stay tuned for details about that. But that will be a way for us to engage with the academic librarian community as well as folks adjacent to it in developing open access and open source resources for meta research. Next. And then finally, I just want to give you an example of our scholarship. This was a paper published last year in Cochrane Evidence Synthesis and Methods, and it's a review assessing the use of AI and automation in published evidence syntheses since 2017. And the main finding is that the integration remains limited and inconsistently reported. And this is not a surprising finding. But we do think this serves as a baseline snapshot as we are kind of on the cusp of this time when we expect AI integration to become more common over the coming years. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sarah for the last part of the talk.
Almost forgot to unmute myself. Thanks, Ryan and Melanie. So now that you have kind of a better sense of the context here at CMU, I just want to kind of transition a bit to talking about how we moved from a service to a program, why we made this move, and how it's helped us reframe our work in ways that I think improve our visibility in the library and at the university. So as Melanie and Ryan talked about, there's this wide range of activities that we've highlighted under this program umbrella. And while these were things we were certainly doing before we transitioned to this program model, we realized that a lot of this work was kind of going under the radar. So within a service model, we were really primarily focused on reporting things like number of consultations or number of hours spent on review projects. And for us, this isn't really telling the whole story, which I think maybe you've gotten a sense of. There's just so many other activities that we weren't really viewing collectively as part of our evidence synthesis work. And we needed a way to think about this more holistically, think about our impact, assess, evaluate, and communicate the full range of contributions that our team was bringing to the library and the institution. So next slide. Okay, so kind of semantically speaking, I think a lot of you are probably wondering, okay, what's the difference between a service and a program? And I imagine many of you are kind of already operating under this program model or thinking about your work in this holistic way. But I think for us, this formal renaming from service to program was kind of an important step, sort of a demarcation point toward reframing our work. Excuse me. And in our libraries, I think services, excuse me, services and programs are kind of actually viewed a little bit differently. So what is the difference between a service and a program? So for us, where we might view a service as focused on meeting an immediate user need through a defined set of activities, something that is delivered by the library to the user, we can think of a program as something broader, more strategic and collaborative that coordinates. Sorry, I'm going to have to take a sip of water. I think we practiced our talk one too many times. So something that's delivered from the library to the user, and we can think of a program as something broader, more strategic and collaborative that coordinates services, partnerships, expertise, and resources towards some longer term goal or objective, where the service is really a core part of that. Next slide. So in thinking about all of these activities as a program, we can really start to add some framework to this. And that really helps us be more strategic in our planning around things like outreach and marketing, communications with the library and university leadership. So the next few slides are going to share some of our thinking around that transition with this framework and focusing on 4 areas: scope and mission, program structure, funding, and evaluation and impact. Next slide. So in thinking about scope and mission, we can consider these at different levels. So at the individual level, we can define the broad range of evidence synthesis activities and related activities that team members do, and in particular, how these activities support faculty development and reappointment and promotion requirements, which for us are in librarianship, scholarship, and service, all of which I think are well sort of informed by the work that we do as a part of this service and program. The library level, we can think about how our activities align with the strategic priorities of the library, which can really help strengthen internal collaborations. And at the university level, we consider how the program contributes to institutional research and teaching goals, which can really help foster those broader campus partnerships. So in thinking about scope and mission in this way, I think it really helps clarify the program's activities and the value it brings with this broader, longer-term perspective, rather than focusing solely on how are we meeting immediate user needs. Next slide. In terms of program structure, we've already talked about the diverse expertise and the many hats that are represented on our team. And we can use these roles to help us connect evidence synthesis work to, for example, disciplinary practices, library instruction, outreach, and the other activities and library initiatives that are kind of adjacent or related or informed by our work. And this can open doors for all kinds of different collaborations and partnerships. And I want to pause here and just note this graphic on the right-hand side of the slide. I think this really highlights the broader expertise that evidence synthesis specialists bring to library work. I think many of us have experienced how, when we learned evidence synthesis methods and skills, suddenly we found ourselves taking a lot of that expertise into different aspects of our work beyond evidence synthesis support. We build expertise in information management, working with bibliographic metadata, transparent and reproducible research methods, and so many other things that come from our work as evidence synthesis methodologists. And I think this has actually been highlighted really nicely in a lot of the talks at the symposium. So one benefit of this program model, which really has us thinking more broadly about our work, is that it provides a way for making these contributions, which I think are often under-recognized, more visible, and demonstrating the broader value of the evidence synthesis program and work to the library and institution. Next slide. Another potential benefit of thinking about sort of things in more of a programmatic sense is that it helps position us for funding and future investment. And this is something we're still exploring, but I think our program status really did help us get support for adding our postdoctoral fellow. A more strategic, kind of future-focused approach can help us make the case for targeted investment in things like staffing, programming, professional development, maybe software pilots. And I think this ties really nicely into Matt's keynote on Monday, where he encouraged us to imagine, what we want or what we would ask for if we were given a blank check. So kind of being ready to communicate where this work is taking us, how it connects to library and university strategic planning. This can help us make the case for investment when those opportunities do arise and demonstrate our value when resources become scarce. Next slide. So finally, adopting a program model really, I think, starts to change how we think about impact. And Whitney gave an awesome talk on how they're doing such cool things with demonstrating impact through things like citation metrics and how publications are being uptaken into policy and decision-making documents. And that's awesome. We do not have that sort of thing to lean on because we're not involved in a ton of reviews. So I think for us, we have to think beyond metrics and really showcasing things like partnership development and other kinds of impact. So one way we're doing this is with our first annual report. This is sort of a year in review. This is going to be released in the coming weeks, and we're really excited about it because I think it highlights this full breadth of activities and partnerships and accomplishments that make up the program. Next slide. Another aspect of communicating impact that we have found super valuable is kind of storytelling. So it's not just about how many reviews we supported, but it's about understanding what happened as a result of that support. For example, as Ryan mentioned, we've got this series of short videos that we did featuring faculty collaborators discussing how the evidence synthesis team contributed to their projects. Next slide. And we've also collaborated with our marketing and communications team to publish a series of news stories that highlight the broader impact of the work. So just want to highlight one example on the left. This is about a PhD student that we were working with on that biomedical scoping review Melanie mentioned. So Colette ended up taking on a real leadership role in this project and developed a passion for open science and an expertise in data management and data sharing through this work. And this is stuff that we were really bringing to the table in this project. And interestingly, it actually ended up impacting her decision to not pursue a career in biology research, but actually pursue a career in science policy and communication. So I think that's such an interesting story to tell and something that would have been completely lost if we had just said, we supported this review, right? Next slide. Okay, some things to consider if you're looking to reframe your service or just sort of start thinking in this kind of programmatic way. First, taking stock of the work you're already doing and really thinking about this work in a broad sense. So not just, we're developing search strategies for reviews or we're supporting systematic reviews and scoping reviews, but we might also be contributing to research. How is this impacting our teaching and other kinds of reference interactions? What kind of partnerships are we developing? So lots of different ways we can think about impact. Secondly, exploring the potential for partnerships. I think, as you've seen from the presentation, some of our most rewarding collaborations have come from connecting with units beyond traditional faculty departments. So for us, for example, undergraduate research folks, we also have worked with our facilities management that wanted to do some interesting scoping review work about sustainability plans, thinking about connecting with health and wellness services, for example. I think these relationships can create really interesting opportunities for broader and more sustained impact. And finally, building connections within the library, so considering how evidence synthesis work intersects with areas such as open science and research data management and AI literacy and these other strategic initiatives. Next slide. So finally, to conclude, why consider this? This slide just shows some of the benefits. I think we've already touched on a lot of these already. And I just want to point out this doesn't need to mean a complete overhaul or some sort of name change, but maybe just a different way of thinking about the work we do and the kinds of impacts that we're having across the library and the university. Next slide. I just want to acknowledge the other members of our wonderful team and the great partners that we have on campus, and we're happy to take questions.